They say the dead don't come back. That grief is the price we pay for love. But what happens when the person you've mourned for 5 years suddenly appears at your daughter's school, very much alive? This is the story of Olivia and Emma Mitchell, and the day a ghost from their past walked back into their lives. May 15th started like any other spring day at Meadowbrook Elementary School. The sky was clear, temperatures perfect for the annual field day activities. 8-year-old Emma Mitchell had been looking forward to this day for weeks. Emma was a quiet child with her mother's gentle smile and her father's thoughtful eyes. At least that's what everyone told her. She didn't remember much about her father. Michael Mitchell had died in a car accident when she was just 3 years old. The few memories she did have were precious treasures she guarded carefully in her heart. As Emma stood in the lunch line, balancing her tray of chicken nuggets and apple slices, something caught her attention across the playground. A man was standing by the fence, waving to a girl in another class. There was something about him, something familiar in the way he stood, the way he laughed. Emma squinted against the sun. The man had the same sandy brown hair as the father in her photos, the same height and build. And when he smiled at the girl, Sophie, a new student who transferred in a few months ago, Emma saw something that made her stomach drop. A small scar above his right eyebrow, just like in the photo on her nightstand. Mrs. Peterson, Emma's teacher, rushed over. "Emma, are you okay?" But Emma couldn't speak. Her eyes were fixed on the man who now looked in her direction, their gazes meeting for just a moment. Recognition flashed across his face before he quickly turned away, taking Sophie's hand and hurrying toward the parking lot. "Emma?" Mrs. Peterson touched her shoulder. "You're pale as a ghost. Do you feel sick?" Emma nodded silently. She did feel sick, because the man she just saw, the man with Sophie, looked exactly like her dead father. Emma barely touched her dinner that night. Olivia had grown accustomed to reading her daughter's moods. As a single mother for the past 5 years, they'd developed the kind of close relationship that comes from facing grief together. At 35, Olivia worked as an administrator at Emma's school district office, a job that allowed her to be present for her daughter while maintaining the modest lifestyle they'd grown accustomed to since Michael's death. Their home in the suburbs of Cleveland was comfortable, if not luxurious. Photos of Michael still adorned the walls and shelves. Olivia believed in keeping his memory alive for Emma. "Are you sure you're okay, sweetie?" Olivia asked as she cleared their plates that evening. "You've been quiet since you got home." Emma pushed her peas around her plate, eyes downcast. Then, without warning, the words tumbled out. "I saw Daddy today." Olivia froze, her heart skipping a beat. This wasn't entirely unexpected. Emma occasionally claimed to see her father in dreams, or feel his presence on important days. The child psychologist had assured Olivia this was normal, part of how young children processed grief. "Oh? Was it a nice thought about him?" Olivia asked gently, resuming her task. Emma shook her head firmly. "No, Mom. I saw Daddy, real Daddy, at school today. He was picking up the new girl, Sophie." The glass Olivia was rinsing slipped from her fingers, clattering in the sink. She turned to face her daughter, searching for the right words. "Honey, I know sometimes it feels like Daddy is still with us, and in many ways he is, but you know that Daddy died when you were little." Emma's face flushed with frustration. "It was him, Mom. He had the scar right here." She pointed above her own eyebrow. "And he laughed just like in the videos. He saw me too. He looked scared." Olivia sat down beside her daughter, taking her small hands. "Emma, sweetheart, I miss Daddy too, so much. But sometimes when we miss people, our minds can play tricks on us. We see what we want to see." "You don't believe me," Emma whispered, tears filling her eyes. That night, Olivia helped Emma get ready for bed as usual. The bedtime routine was sacred. Bath, pajamas, story time, and what they called daddy talks. Moments when Emma could ask questions about her father, and Olivia would share memories. But tonight, Emma was unusually quiet, as Olivia tucked her in beside the stuffed bear Michael had given her, and under the quilt Michael's mother had made. "Would you like to look at the album?" Olivia offered, reaching for the photo book they often reviewed during daddy talks. Emma shook her head. "I know what he looks like, Mom. I saw him today." After Emma fell asleep, Olivia sat in the living room, a glass of wine untouched beside her. Emma's words had disturbed her more than she let on. It wasn't the first time Emma had imagined seeing her father, but something about her certainty, the specific detail about the scar, a small mark from a childhood accident that wasn't visible in most family photos, gnawed at her. Olivia opened the family photo album, turning to their wedding pictures. Michael's face smiled back at her. handsome, kind, with crinkles around his eyes when he laughed. 5 years had passed since the accident that took him from them. 5 years of rebuilding a life from the shattered pieces he left behind. The official report had been straightforward. Michael's car had gone off a bridge during a heavy rainstorm. The vehicle was recovered, but his body had been swept downriver. After weeks of searching, authorities had declared him deceased. The closed casket funeral had been attended by hundreds. Michael had been well liked in their community, his work as a financial consultant bringing him into contact with many local businesses. Olivia traced his face in the photo. "What did she see today, Michael?" she whispered to the empty room. The following morning, Emma was adamant about returning to school despite still seeming unsettled. Sophie's dad might come again, she explained, when Olivia suggested she stay home if still feeling unwell. During her lunch break, Olivia found herself pulling out the accordion folder where she kept important documents. Inside was Michael's death certificate, the police report, newspaper clippings about the accident, and sympathy cards. She'd kept everything, partly as proof for insurance and legal matters, partly because organizing these papers had given her something to focus on during those first terrible weeks. The death certificate stated clearly, Michael James Mitchell, deceased April 10th, 5 years ago. That evening when Emma came home from school, her disappointment was palpable. "He wasn't there today," she said, dropping her backpack by the door. "I looked everywhere." "Emma," Olivia began cautiously, "I want to show you something." She led her daughter to the dining table, where she'd laid out the death certificate and newspaper clippings. "This is why I know Daddy can't be at your school," she explained gently. "These are official papers that show Daddy died in the accident. Remember how we talked about this?" Emma studied the papers with a serious expression that seemed too mature for her 8 years. Then she looked up at her mother with those eyes, Michael's eyes. "Papers can be wrong, Mom." That night, after Emma went to bed, Olivia found a drawing on her daughter's desk. It showed a man and a girl standing by a car. The man was labeled Sophie's dad and had been drawn with remarkable detail for a child's artwork, right down to a small mark above his right eyebrow. By the third day, Olivia couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Emma's insistence, the specific details, the drawing, it was all so unusual for her typically pragmatic daughter. During her lunch break, Olivia called her friend Diane, who worked in the front office at Emma's school. "Hey Di, strange question. There's a new student named Sophie who started recently. Do you know anything about her family?" "Sophie Harrison," Diane confirmed. "Transferred in about 2 months ago. Sweet kid, quiet. Why do you ask?" "Just curious." "Emma mentioned her," Olivia said, trying to sound casual. "Does she have siblings at the school?" "No, just her. Lives with her dad. Mom passed away, I believe. Cancer, from what I heard. They moved here from Michigan to be closer to Sophie's grandmother." Olivia's heart rate quickened. "What's her dad like?" "Richard? Seems nice enough. Started volunteering for the reading program on Thursdays. The kids love him. Actually, he reminds me a bit of..." Diane paused. "Oh, I shouldn't say that." "Say what?" Olivia pressed. "It's just, the first time I met him, I thought he looked a bit like Michael. Similar build, coloring. I almost mentioned it but caught myself. Last thing you need is some thoughtless comparison to dredge up painful memories." Olivia gripped the phone tighter. "Do you have a photo? On the school system, maybe? We have his driver's license scan for the background check. But Liv, what's this about? Can you pull it up? Please, Di. It's important." "Okay, I'm looking at it now. Richard Harrison, 38. Brown hair, hazel eyes. Honestly, in this photo, the resemblance isn't that strong. Just a general type similarity." Olivia exhaled slowly. Of course. It was just a coincidence that had triggered Emma's imagination. "Thanks, Di. Sorry for the strange request." "No problem. Oh, he's actually here today. Came in for the volunteer orientation meeting. Want me to introduce you? Might put the whole resemblance thing to rest." Olivia froze. "He's there now?" "In the library with the other new volunteers. Meeting ends in about 15 minutes. I'll be right there." Olivia drove to Emma's school in a daze, telling herself this was just to put her daughter's confusion to rest. She could take a quick look at this Richard Harrison, reassure herself it was merely a passing resemblance, and then gently help Emma understand. She parked her car and hurried toward the main entrance, her heels clicking against the pavement. As she approached the front doors, they swung open, and a group of adults emerged from the building. The volunteer orientation meeting must have ended. Olivia slowed her pace, scanning the group. A tall woman with gray hair, a young man in a university sweatshirt, an elderly gentleman, a middle-aged woman with a bright scarf, and then a man stepped out last, checking his watch. Sandy brown hair, athletic build, casually dressed in jeans and a blue button-down shirt. He had his back to her as he waved goodbye to someone inside. When he turned, Olivia's world stopped spinning. Despite the neatly trimmed beard he now wore, despite the 5 years that had passed, she would know that profile anywhere. The straight nose, the defined jawline, The way he stood with weight shifted slightly to one side. As if sensing her presence, he looked up. Their eyes met across the courtyard. For one eternal second they stared at each other, recognition, shock, and something like fear flashing across his face. Then Richard Harrison, the man with her husband's eyes, turned and walked quickly toward the parking lot. Olivia couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The world narrowed to a single impossible thought. Michael was alive. To understand the magnitude of what Olivia experienced in that school courtyard, we need to step back and look at the life she and Emma had built around Michael's memory. The Mitchells had been the quintessential young family. Michael and Olivia met during their senior year of college, she studying education, he pursuing finance. Their friends described them as perfectly matched, both kind, somewhat reserved, with the same subtle sense of humor. You could tell they were meant for each other, recalled Sarah Jenkins, Olivia's best friend since college. They had this way of communicating without words. Michael would look across a crowded room at Olivia, and she'd just nod like he'd asked a question out loud. They married 2 years after graduation. Emma arrived 3 years later. Their modest home in a good school district had been carefully chosen with future siblings for Emma in mind. Home videos from that time show a doting father, Michael reading to infant Emma, Michael teaching toddler Emma to walk, his hands hovering protectively as she took wobbling steps. Michael asleep on the couch with Emma napping on his chest, one of his hands cupped gently around her tiny body. He adored that little girl. She was his world. That's why none of this makes any sense. The day everything changed, April 10th, 5 years ago, had been ordinary until it wasn't. Michael called Olivia on his way home from work. "It's pouring. I might be late," he said. "Don't hold dinner." Those were the last words she heard from him. When he hadn't arrived by 8 p.m., Olivia started calling his cell phone. No answer. By 9 p.m., she was calling hospitals. By 10 p.m., she'd reported him missing to the police. At 11:42 p.m., officers arrived at her door. "There's been an accident," they told her. "A car matching your husband's vehicle description went off Lakeside Bridge. Due to the storm conditions and strong currents, rescue operations are limited, but will resume at daybreak." 3 days of searching followed. Michael's car was recovered half a mile downstream. His wallet and phone were inside, but Michael wasn't. The subsequent weeks became a blur of police interviews, search updates, and finally, as hope faded, funeral preparations. Although no body was recovered, after extensive searching, authorities issued a death certificate. The theory was that Michael had been swept downstream into Lake Erie, where recovery would be nearly impossible. The community rallied around Olivia and Emma. Meals appeared on their doorstep. Friends took turns staying with them. Michael's parents, devastated by the loss of their only child, channeled their grief into supporting their daughter-in-law and granddaughter. Emma, not quite 4 years old, didn't fully comprehend what had happened. "Where, Daddy?" she would ask each morning for weeks. Olivia consulted child psychologists about the best way to explain death to a toddler. She created a memory box with Emma, filling it with photos and small mementos of Michael. They would visit his empty grave at Lakeview Cemetery, where Emma would leave drawings and talk to her father about her day. As the years passed, these rituals evolved, but remained central to their lives. The anniversary of Michael's death was marked with a special dinner where they shared memories. Emma's achievements were celebrated with acknowledgments of how proud her father would be. At bedtime, Emma often held the stuffed bear her father had given her, while Olivia recounted stories about him. "I was determined that Emma would know who her father was," Olivia explained, "that even though he was gone, his love for her would remain a presence in her life." Olivia's own grief journey was less visible, but no less profound. She attended support groups for young widows, saw a therapist, and slowly, painfully, rebuilt a life without the partner she'd expected to grow old with. Dating again had been a monumental step. Her first date, 3 years after Michael's death, ended with her crying in her car outside the restaurant. The second wasn't much better. By the 5th date, with different men over the course of months, she'd managed to get through an entire evening without comparing each man to Michael. But no relationship progressed beyond a few casual dates. Olivia wore her wedding ring on a chain around her neck, rather than on her finger, a step toward moving on that she couldn't quite complete. "It wasn't just about me," she admitted during our conversation. "I worried about how Emma would feel about another man in our lives, and honestly, no one measured up to what we had. I'd resigned myself to the possibility that Michael might have been my one great love." Michael's parents, Patricia and Robert Mitchell, remained deeply involved in Emma and Olivia's lives. Sunday dinners at their home were a weekly tradition. They never pressured Olivia to move on, seeming to find comfort in their shared dedication to preserving Michael's memory. "They were my rocks," Olivia said. "They'd lost their son, yet somehow found the strength to help me raise Emma. They kept Michael alive for all of us." This was the backdrop against which Emma's shocking claim unfolded, a family defined by loss, held together by shared memories and carefully maintained rituals of remembrance. A mother and daughter who had painfully assembled a new normal from the pieces of their shattered expectations. And now, standing in that school courtyard, Olivia faced an impossible reality. The foundation of their rebuilt lives, Michael's death, might have been a lie. Olivia didn't remember driving home from the school. Her body operated on autopilot while her mind struggled to process what she'd seen. She called in sick to work, something she rarely did, and sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. The man at Emma's school had looked like Michael, but after 5 years, couldn't her mind be playing tricks on her? Grief did strange things to perception. She'd once been convinced she saw Michael in a grocery store, only to realize it was a stranger when he turned around. But this felt different. The recognition in his eyes when he saw her, the way he'd hurried away, and there was Emma's insistence. Her daughter had recognized him first, had noticed details like the scar above his eyebrow that wasn't prominent in their photos. Diane arrived during her lunch break, concern written across her face. "You sounded so strange on the phone," she said, hugging Olivia. "What's going on?" Olivia led her friend to the living room, where she'd laid out family photos of Michael alongside Emma's drawing of Sophie's dad. "I need you to be brutally honest with me," Olivia said. "The man you know is Richard Harrison. Tell me truthfully how much he resembles Michael." Diane looked uncomfortable.